this is just a little bit of the story of what God has done in my life. And you know, your testimony is the best weapon you've got. It's the best defense you've got. It's, you know, remind yourself where you came from, tell it back to yourself, tell it to other people. Because it's your story. You know it better than you know anything else. You know, you're not repeating other people's stuff. This is your story, and it's in what God has done in your life, and share that. It's just, you know, and it's so simple. That's the easiest thing we have and the most powerful thing we have to share. What He's done for us and what He does in our lives. You know, it's hard for me to explain to somebody that the difference in my quality of life from, 10 years ago to now. But it's every time I try to find words and try to explain it and everything else, it's a testimony to the power of God.
And we're going to tell Ronnie's story. A story of someone who was away from the faith and came back 25, 30 years later. All the while his mother, Aletha, was praying. Last episode we heard from his mother, Aletha, and one of his daughters, Nicole. They shared the prayers and the transformation that they saw. Let's hear his story. It's a story that proves returns do happen. I'm Jake McCandless, and you're listening to Hold On, a podcast where I explore the dynamics of faith in our modern world and encourage you to hold on and keep the faith. Our church operated this van ministry, and we were picking up kids from all over the area. And the van I was riding pulled up at Ronnie's house, and 3 precious girls got on. But I didn't see the rough and tough, authentic cowboy dad, in which I had been told. The girl's dad is an awesome dad. He loves his girls. But if you pull up there and he's drinking, he could be mean. Well, that mean cowboy is on the line with me.
I left home at 17 to go to the military, go to the Navy, and regardless of I surrendered my life at 16 in church camp to really, truly surrender my life to the Lord. And I'd been baptized and went through the motions at a younger age, and it was conviction and it was an experience with God. But it wasn't. I don't want to say it wasn't salvation, but it didn't suit me because I didn't change. And I know now that repentance is change, and you can have an experience with God and not truly surrender your life to the Lord. But at 16, I surrendered. I surrendered my life to the Lord, and I've already been accused of preaching all the time, so I surrendered my life to the ministry to preach. I knew that probably that's what I was going to end up doing. We were involved in a youth group, and we had a traveling improv group with the youth group. We traveled to churches all over I sang in a choir. We traveled and sang, did specials, did performances at churches. So for about a year there, I was really hooked up and on fire. And then at 17, I left for boot camp. And I laughed because it was such a shock. I graduated high school, and within 48 hours of graduating, I was in boot camp, and I'd been taught with an alcoholic daddy, and a lot of. Let me put it this way: I had a lot of alcoholism in my family and around me growing up, and I'd been taught by everybody there how to be what you would call a man's man. You know what I'm saying? I'd been taught that rugged individualism, stand on my own 2 feet, and so on and so forth. Well, when I left for boot camp, I didn't intentionally try to leave the church then. I just left for boot camp, But I discovered the anger and some of those things that had been in my life for a long time found an outlet.
I think you just gave me a soundbite I'm going to use over and over and over again. I didn't intend to leave the church. I just left for boot camp. And that's so often the truth. We don't set out to abandon the faith that meant something to us, maybe even abandon the church that meant something to us. It just happens. Sometimes our faith just fades away in the sunset. But as you've said, I think you keep pointing out, this fierce individualism was a big player in what was going on.
I discovered that I knew how to be a man's man. I knew what it meant. I could outwork you all day. I could outdrink you all night. And if you didn't particularly care for me or didn't like that, or I was mad at you, I'd just take your girlfriend away from you too. And I knew how to do those things, and I did it. I'm guilty of it. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it when I can beat you up. So, and so I lived that way. I got caught up in that and realized that at the time things were going on at home, and the church was not what I thought it had been. Because you got to remember, I'd only been really about a year there. A summer, basically from one summer to the next summer, I'm in boot camp. So within a year, all this happened, and I realized the church is not what I thought it was, because I had a giant relationship with God built on the people around me in that church. You know what I'm saying? I just looked up so many of them, and I had so many pillars of what I thought was true Christian walks and true Christian men and women and marriages. And, within a few years, most of the marriages had fell apart. The men weren't what they said they were. The women weren't what they said they were. The people weren't what they said they were. The church, and it's not, it happens in every church. The church is made up of sinful, broken people. And with all the things that had happened to me as a kid, I had so much anger, and I thought I was going to get rid of it at 16 there when I surrendered to the Lord, and I thought that He's going to take all this away. Well, He didn't. Things didn't change so much, and some things got worse. And then the thing that I thought was safe was the church, and then it got worse. And and I'd go to other churches and realize that, hey, these people, I drank beer with that one last night. I've seen that one at the club. So I thought, well, this is just a sham. There's nothing to this. These are fake people. They put on their Christianity on a Sunday morning. They just open the closet and they get it off the hanger, and they shower and they clean up and they put on this Christianity like a suit, and they wear it to church, and they go home and take it off when they put it back in their closet, and it stays there till next week. And I thought, man, I don't want to be a part of that. That's as fake as everything else around me. And it just let me down so much that it was just one more angry stick to throw on a fire that was already pretty bad.
So you eventually get out of the Navy, you come back home to Arkansas, begin to work. What was your faith like? How would you describe your faith?
We would term that, I don't want to say non-existent, but it was essentially just in the back of my mind. It just was. I didn't really think much about God, and He wasn't really bothering me. So I felt like we had a pretty good understanding. I wouldn't bother Him, and He wouldn't bother me. And it seemed to work all right that way for me. At least I thought it was for a lot of years anyway.
I'm sure many others would probably describe that as their relationship with God. Knew about Him, made a decision at some point in their life, but it's just non-existent at portions of their life. I want to get to your kind of the time when I met you. You've mentioned to me that you were angry at that point. What was going on in your life then?
Oh, I still had all that stuff from the past just bottled up inside me. I still didn't have a very, I guess you'd say, a very good relationship with my step-parents. I didn't have a good relationship with a lot of people for that matter, but I had been married and had the girls, and 3 girls, and had been divorced and a product of infidelity from my first wife. Again, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to the girls, and of course now I'm the protector and the provider for these 3 girls, so I carried an even bigger chip, an even bigger stick, I guess you would be the right way to say it, because I had no idea how to raise 3 girls. I had gotten custody of them, and they were mine, and I had to provide for them, and I knew that. So, quite a feeling of maybe inadequacy in a way, but yet a fierce determination to do it or die trying. And so I felt like I was fighting the whole world at that time. Yeah, well, I had remarried to my current wife, and then one of over 20 years now, right at 20 years, and the love of my life and God's little blessing on me. She was the mother of 3 daughters, teenage daughters, so which made me the father of 6 girls.
Your family grew pretty fast.
Yeah, if you think you don't know how to raise 3, you got to raise 6. God has a sense of humor, in case you're not sure.
Yes, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah, as a father of 6 girls, I was overwhelmed and under-equipped, and so I went about it the same way I'd gone about everything else in my life, with a fierce resentment and some anger and some real determination, and just trying to bull my way through. I didn't know what I was doing, but if you do it loud enough and fast enough, and then get violent when you make mistakes, people you can make your way through a lot of things.
Yeah, that's some great advice, but just maybe for another show. A lot going on, but also going on at this time was a battle with addiction. What kind of hold did that addiction have on your life?
Oh, but this time I had, I guess the alcoholism probably began, when I left home, or even maybe before that, but to some extent. I hadn't drank all that they were making, but I had them working 3 shifts. And that's just the way I looked at things. And it was a pride issue that I could hold my liquor, type thing. And so I drank extensively, and functioned, kept a job, never was without a job or anything, and got up and went to work, because that's part of the pride thing. You could drink all night, but you got to get up and go to work next day and make a hand at work too. I became addicted to methamphetamines rather easy, because I found out with the use of that, I could drink a lot more. So it was just almost a catch-22. They went hand in hand. I could drink all I wanted and use methamphetamines to sober myself back up and drink some more. So that was the start of it, and of course it spiraled into full-blown addiction rather quickly, like most drugs will.
You mentioned the addiction to meth that you were dealing with. Did you see the downward spiral it was causing in your life?
I mean, alcoholism wasn't helping any. The anger wasn't helping any. None of it was helping any. But yeah, there was no doubt that accelerated the process by a large amount. And I knew it. And I knew I had to get clean somehow. And that was kind of the deal. Is that I don't want to sound like a cliche, but I thought I've got to clean my life up and get back in church. Somewhere in the process of a drug-induced stupor or alcohol-induced stupor, somewhere that thought came to my mind that this may be the way out of this. This may be the way to beat this. I've got to clean my life up and get back in church. All I've got to do is clean up. And I hate to admit it, but I spent years trying to get myself out of that addiction, to clean myself up so that I could come back to church. Somewhere, like I said, in my mind, I'd come to this point that I have to clean up and get back in church. I have to clean up, at least start going to church more than just Christmas and Easter and Mother's Day with Mama, And so I made that attempt for a long time, but I'm to be like the fisherman that I was the fish trying to clean itself before the fisherman caught me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes,
makes sense. Yeah.
We're guilty of that.
Yeah.
Somehow we convince ourselves but like I said, I'd spent my entire life taking care of myself. It was my responsibility to provide for 6 girls and a wife, and at times my brother, and other members of the family that needed help. That was my responsibility to step in and help. So I felt like I was the fixer. It's my job to keep the wolf from the door. It's my job to keep the roof over the head. So it has to be my job to clean myself up, right? That made sense to me. And so I struggled with that. And, ultimately I made a few trips to church, and you probably remember seeing me back then. I sat on the back row, things, and I was trying to find some way, some motivation, some super spectacular Bible verse that would give me to get clean. That one magic formula, that magic word. I wanted to rub that genie in a bottle and be clean, and I just couldn't do it. The harder I tried, the more addicted I became, and the worse I became. The more I drank and the more I used, and the worse father I became, and the worse husband I became. Probably the worst human being I became would be the right way to say it. So the harder I tried to clean myself up, the further I went in the wrong direction. And that culminated at a time that you'll be familiar with. And I returned to church one more time, and then I returned to church that time, as stupid as it sounds, to tell God goodbye. Because I had tried with all my might. I tried with every fiber of my being. I've never not been able to do something that I wanted to do, or be able to accomplish something I wanted to accomplish and needed to accomplish, especially for my family. I had tried with every fiber of my being, and I could not beat it. And I come to an altar that day with my eyes leaking and my heart broke to tell God goodbye. Because I can't do it. And that's exactly what I said when my knees hit the floor, is I can't beat it. And this is, I was done. And I learned at that point in my life, at that time, that's what God had been waiting for 25 years. Was for me to shut up and get out of the way and let Him work. And they make fun of people on TV, and the vice president and stuff says God talked to them, and I can't tell you an audible voice boomed from heaven, but the only thought that ran through my mind was it was never your type to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized at that time that was the deal. I had been fighting a fight that had been won long ago. And I was just too hard-headed and too prideful and too stubborn to get out of the way and let God fix what was wrong. And once I reached that point and surrendered myself to Him, truly surrendered my life to Him, wow, what a ride. It has been phenomenal.
People listening can see the joy or hear the joy, but you just see it in your life. You can't contain it. So you have that moment at the altar. What happens from there?
I get to share now. I get to preach. I get to teach. I get to work with addicts and alcoholics.
Ronnie was away from church and the faith for some time, quite a while. If you caught the previous episode, his mom was praying, his kids were praying, a church was praying, and he came back. People come back, and as he said, now with the work he's doing, him and some of those working with him, they're being used to help others come back to the faith. And one of the beautiful things that came up in my interview with Ronnie, in my interview with his mom. His mom said the Lord had placed in her heart this promise that Ronnie would come back. And she shared how the Lord never gave up on him. And Ronnie also shared with me as we were going through that interview, the Lord never gave up on him. God wasn't done with him. And I can't help but hear Ronnie's story and not think of Jonah's story. Jonah was called to go speak in Nineveh. God told him to do that, and Jonah went the far opposite way to Tarshish. Goes and is in the storm in the boat, asked him to throw him over. He goes into the belly of the great fish for 3 days. He's spit out. And we hear that, and it seems like this tragic story where God punished rebellion, but actually it's a story of God pursuing Jonah. God pursues. He leaves the 99 to go after the one. So I hope you gain hope that people do return. And if you are there, holding on by a thread, you're being pursued. Let the Lord catch you. Come back and hold on. Thank you for listening to Hold On, my podcast where I explore the dynamics of our faith in our modern world and encourage you to keep the faith. If you've enjoyed this episode and you feel that this could make an impact with someone in your life, please share it with them. Subscribe now to keep up with the latest episodes and visit holdonpodcast.com or find us on Facebook at Hold On Podcast or find me on Twitter and Instagram at StandFirmJake to find out more about how you can hold on.